Hello, and welcome to US History and Elections. Today we're going to be looking at a different kind of election prediction. Usually I would be using polling data as my main source of making predictions, but considering Kamala Harris has only been in the presidential race for a week, there is only a small snapshot of polls. There is not enough trend data to go off. I'd say give it a week. I'll be much more confident in giving a prediction for the swing states and the national popular vote race and how those two combine and link up to form better prediction. But we're going to be looking at Professor Allan Lichtman's infamous, some would say, 13 Keys to the White House. Formulated in the early 1980s, they've been used to predict every single presidential election winner since the 1984 election, bar a asterisk on the 2000 election. Essentially, if we go to the Wikipedia page here, he claimed that Al Gore would have won. He won the popular vote, but he did not win the election at large because of the election count in Florida. Arguably, Bush could have won that if the Supreme Court did not intervene. Arguably, Gore could have won Florida if the Supreme Court didn't intervene, but that happened 24 years ago, and that is how it is. But essentially, he has been able to correctly predict tough elections, such as the 2016 election, and when the polling data said that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Now, the way we're going to be we're going to be going through every single question. As it says here, 8 or more keys are true, then the incumbent party candidate wins. That would be Kamala Harris. However, if 6 or more of the keys are false, then the challenger party candidate, in this case Donald Trump, he would win. Now, I'm going to be going through explaining my characterization first of all. At the end of the video, I'm going to be looking at the professor's current calculation. I believe he said he would be making a final prediction based on his keys at the end of August, so stay tuned for that if you do not trust me. But I'll be showing you my opinion because some of these, such as foreign military failure and charismatic incumbent, these are sort of questions that are subjective. Some of these are objective, a number of these are also subjective. So we're going to be starting off by looking at the midterm gains. Now, as you well know, the previous Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, was deposed by his own party, but when he was the minority leader, he led the Republicans to a narrow House victory, gaining 9 seats overall in the 2022 House races, and therefore the Democrats lost. Democrats being the incumbent party lost seats overall in the 2022 midterms. Therefore, that is a certain false. Now, over to the primary contest. Biden essentially faced no primary contest. However, when he dropped out, there was talk of whether there be a mini primary for the month leading up to the Democratic National Convention. In the end, that very much failed to materialize. Within a few days, Kamala Harris had gained the majority support of the pledged delegates, and I can assure you that the DNC will be doing their best to ensure that nothing crazy happens at the convention. There may be protests outside of that, I'll come to that in a second, but it will be pretty much all ceremonial. Kamala Harris will be there will be pretty much no conjecture to her securing the Democratic Party nomination, and therefore that will be a certainly true thing for the incumbent. And incumbency and re-election, this is clearly false because the incumbent president is Joe Biden. He just recently said he was stepping down, and while she is vice president, she does not, being the incumbent vice president, does not count as being an incumbent for the sake of the 13 keys. Now, no third party. This is the first one where it gets quite interesting because I'm sure, as you may well know, there has been quite a prominent third party nominee, and that third party nominee is Robert F. Kennedy. And say we did this about a year ago. This time was about a year ago. There you go. He had a favorability rating of 14 points. He was fairly favorable, although there's about a 30%, 25% non-response rate to a lot of these polls. However, in the last year, this was the crossover point about the start of April, his unfavorability rating has increased a lot. And to go hand in hand with that, he was polling in the high to mid-teens initially. His polling numbers have since clearly fallen massively. They are now hovering around 6 to 9 points. And you can see this in statewide polling as well. Usually he is polling anywhere between 4 to about 9 points. And what usually happens with polling data, this happened in 2016, if you look back at it, there was a lot of criticism from voters saying, we don't want to vote for Hillary, we don't want to vote for Trump, so we're going to vote for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. At the end of the day, even though Gary Johnson had polling numbers as high as 20% in September, those polling numbers fell. He was polling about similar numbers as Kennedy is now, and he didn't even gain 5% of the vote. And 5% of the vote, if we go back to the keys, is what you need, as you can see. The key is false if a third party candidate is likely to win 5% or more of the popular vote. Therefore, there is no third party. Essentially, this could change. Robert F. Kennedy could have a poll bounce, but he is trending and has trended for the last year negatively. So at the moment, we will put that in the likely true column. Now, the short-term economy, long-term economy, this is certainly true. Now, you may think that the short-term economy under the Biden administration in the last 2 years has been seen quite negatively. A lot of the American public have negative opinions of the economy as a whole, but it is not about opinions. It is about stock prices, unemployment rate, inflation rate, and this has all been going down short term. And essentially, it just compares whether this has increased since the last presidential administration, that being Trump. And unfortunately for Trump, he had to deal with the COVID-19 recession, which tanked the economy. So in both of these columns, because the economy has easily rebounded since then, these go into certainly true. But even though these are two objective ones, it is interesting because the public's opinion on the economy is very different to what the economic numbers and statistics are actually saying. So it's going to be interesting to watch out for this because we've not really had a situation like this. Maybe 2008, but that was at the very, very start of the election. You could say 2012. But that is essentially what we're going to be putting it as two certainly false. And we're also going to be putting major policy change as certainly true. And this is for Biden's Build Back Better plan. You may have forgotten about this because polling data suggests that a lot of people have, but this is huge amounts. We were talking about trillions of dollars. If you remember the COVID-19 pandemic relief bill, other bills such as the infrastructure bill, these all were part of the Build Back Better plan, which happened pretty much in 2021 and just towards the end of the 2020 period when Donald Trump was a lame duck president. But this constitutes a serious policy change because there was trillions of dollars invested in a lot of areas that had not seen investment for decades, if not longer. We're going to be now moving on to no social unrest. This is an interesting one because, as you saw most recently, when Netanyahu did a very controversial speech to a joint session of Congress the other day, there were thousands of pro-Gaza protesters outside the Capitol. They were burning American flags, and it made a huge news story. And there have been protests like this going on for months due to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Now, at the moment, these have not been as widespread as, say, the Black Lives Matter protests were in 2020, because that constituted a social unrest, and therefore the key turned negative for Trump. At the moment, I would say it leans positive, but if the social unrest gets worse, and if you are following events in the Middle East, there is suggestion that the Israel-Hezbollah conflict could be going into a much worse scenario. This could, arguably inflame the protests, and this is too early to say what happens with this no social unrest. Up until mid-October, anything could change. But for the moment, there is no serious social unrest enough to make it false for the incumbent party. Now we're going to move on to no scandal, and this is certainly true for the moment because the scandal is not to do with Hunter Biden. There's certainly a scandal with him. He was recently convicted, but we were talking about the president and the president only. In this case, that was Joe Biden previously, but now it is Kamala Harris, and there's certainly zero scandals for her, mainly because the media has not been focusing on her for the past few years. There could be something randomly unearthed from her history, but that is looking very, very unlikely. At the moment, there is very little scandalous-wise that can be thrown at Kamala Harris, so that goes into the certainly true. Now, these are the interesting ones. No for military failure. I'm going to put that into certainly false. Now, for this reason, I will be putting it as certainly false, and at the moment I will be putting likely false for foreign military success. The only major foreign military success I could see is if the Biden administration, and by extension Kamala Harris as vice president, managed to secure a ceasefire agreement in the Israel-Gaza conflict. That is looking unlikely at the moment, and because of the same reasoning, what happened in Afghanistan, the pullout there, the Ukraine war, and the Israel-Gaza conflict, as I just mentioned, due to the huge damage that has done to Biden's popularity rating and the administration as a whole, this tanked Kamala Harris's popularity, as we will see. This is definitely going into a certainly false, in my opinion, because that is pretty much the source of a lot of the negative press and negative opinions towards the Biden-Harris administration. Now, the final two ones are going to be deciding, as you see, if both these are false, then Trump wins. However, if both of these are true, then Kamala Harris handily wins. But for Kamala Harris, she is a currently uncharismatic incumbent. But as you can see, her approval rating has pretty much been about -15 recently, up to -20 in December. But ever since her introduction as the Democratic presumptive nominee, it has shot up massively, and she is now about where is it? There we go, 9.5. Oh, it says there. She is about a unfavorable rating of 9.2. Still unfavorable and still an uncharismatic incumbent. But as you can see, I mentioned at the start, this is only a snapshot. If the trends continue, then something might change. But I do not believe enough to change that she is a uncharismatic incumbent. Therefore, this is false. However, Donald Trump, this is for the last year, just to show you, since August of 2023. He is also a uncharismatic incumbent, uncharismatic challenger, because even though he may appeal very strongly to his base, this is only to his base. We are talking about an Obama 2008 character, a Ronald Reagan 1980, 1984 type of character. This profile has rarely been seen in American politics. Like I said, the last one was Obama in 2008. He lost the charismatic key in 2012. So as you can see, it's very hard to see. But again, like Harris, he has recently been trending. This favorability has been trending ever since the assassination attempt on his life, and it has started to plateau a bit, but this is really short. We want to be seeing another week or two to see where this trend goes from there. But for the moment, that turns the uncharismatic challenger to a likely true, because if this is true for the incumbency, it goes to the incumbent party. And in this scenario, Harris wins. And this is actually the same as Allan Lichtman's key tracker. This is his current prediction as of the end of July. And I do pretty much agree with him, though I do agree stronger on some ones than him, and he agrees on the strength of other keys different to me. But what I want to say at the moment is that a lot of these are subjective. No social unrest, subjective. Foreign/military failure, success, charisma for the incumbent and the challenger, subjective. And third party is very hard to tell at the moment, but I would say it is almost certain that Robert F. Kennedy is not going to get 5% nationwide, because the trends for his polling data are going down, and historically it's very hard. Ever since OSPRO, no third party candidate has done it anywhere near close enough to reach that 5% margin. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. I will be looking to make some polling videos very soon once there's more data. I just want to say thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for similar content to this coming up in the next few days and weeks, and I will see you all again very soon.